Hi, I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Rihanna, and welcome back to Fresh Off the Broke.
Fresh Off the Broke is about personal experiences growing up Asian American in a predominantly white community, Asian media, and Asian pop culture in general. Race has always been a sensitive topic. Every day there are debates over race. With our podcast, we intend to shed light on the experiences of first-generation Asian immigrants, not put them on a pedestal.
We understand that race isn't everything, but there should be an acknowledgement of people of color, the knowledge gap, and the racial divide that will ideally be broken. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into the episode. Today we'll be discussing sexism towards girls and women in the Asian community. First off, we have a few things to say. We both identify as females and grew up as such, which is why we're talking about sexism specifically towards girls.
And additionally, sexism towards Asian males absolutely exists, and toxic masculinity in the Asian community is a huge issue. We do have an episode regarding this topic in the works, and we intend to work with someone that has personal experiences regarding this topic, as we want to pass the mic, not speak on behalf of them. As like Rihanna said, we both identify as female. Now, we will also not solely be discussing these nuances through a Western lens, as, like we said, we're talking about the Asian community, and that does not exclude the Asian community that's actually in Asia, in the East. Again, to add on to that, we acknowledge that some of the experiences we share in this episode are rooted in the stigma that our elders went through as well, and they passed it down to us as they thought it was normal, since, they faced the exact same thing and they quote-unquote turned out fine, which can lead to intergenerational trauma, and it's important that we introspect these issues to break the cycle. Now, finally, as I mentioned, Asian elders, hate crimes towards Asian Americans is at an all-time high. During and close to Lunar New Year, senior citizens were shoved, robbed, and killed. It is imperative that we support and advocate for these issues as the entire community. Resources will be linked below. And we Asians must also rally together with our Black peers. We cannot be anti-Black while fighting anti-Asian racism. You cannot be anti-racist without discussing racism to any and all groups. At the end of the day, we do need solidarity to fight this.
The first topic that we're going to discuss is our families and our experiences within our families. So, for my family, I always heard about how my parents were expecting a boy / they didn't want a girl. And, this was something that was really affected me growing up. Not affected, severely, but it always stuck in the back of my mind, thinking oh, my parents never wanted a girl in the first place. That's weird. And I think I learned that when I was pretty young as well. And I don't think it's necessarily manifested in a direct way, but it's one of those things where unconsciously it'll change my thoughts on things, Yeah. And my parents are obviously traditional girl equals pink, boy equals blue. And my room, I just realized this, my room used to be blue because they wanted a boy. And where I sleep, where I face the wall, I can see the blue paint underneath the pink because my room is very much pink.
Wow.
So it's just one of those things that's always yep, they wanted a boy. And they always tell me that. Always.
When you say that they told you this, or they always tell you this, is this something that they bring up in a joking way, or is it, oh, we're having a fight right now, I never wanted you?
It's never in a fight way.
That's
but
good.
It is the first time they told me, I think I asked them oh, did you want a girl? Because I don't remember what the conversation was, but I asked my mom, did you want a girl? And she said no, and we laughed about it. But then she brought it up later and she wasn't laughing, and she was I wanted a boy. When it's something that you think you're gonna laugh at, but then the person doesn't laugh with you, and it's oh, that's awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those things.
That's not. I won't say that that's not something you should tell your kid because, honesty.
Yeah.
But it's about the delivery because if you don't say it the right way, you're gonna make them feel pretty unwanted.
Yeah, it's all like now that I'm older, I know that it's not supposed to be, oh, we didn't want you, you know? But when I was younger and I heard we're gonna put you in basketball, in hockey, you would have done this, you would have done that, like you would have helped your dad do this, and it's like, okay, well, what do you want from me? And also now that I think about it, I think that really like is the reason why I grew up as such like I always wanted to be like a tomboy type person. Like I really hated the color pink and like typically girly things, and I was always like, oh, I'm not gonna wear dresses, I'm not gonna wear skirts, all of that stuff. But now that I'm older, like Tiffany knows this, everything I own now is pink. Like I really come to accept the fact that it's fine to like these typically girly things, but I rejected them so much when I was younger. And I think it probably has to do with my parents telling me that at a young age.
No, yeah, I totally understand that because a lot of the times these reflexes or these interests are very much subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't have to say, oh, I don't want to be as girly in order to feel that way. It can just be a thought in the back of your head, like you said, how it didn't necessarily affect you, but it did have like a subconscious effect on you.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. It's one of those things where I can start to see it now, but back then it was just one of those things that was always in my mind, you know?
And
Yeah.
aside from your parents, did anyone else ever comment or just state that they also thought it would be better if you were a boy?
Not necessarily. Not really. I think it also has to do with the fact that like my dad was the youngest child in his family.
Mm-hmm.
And so like anything that like any child that he got would be fine, you know?
Uh-huh.
So yeah, there wasn't really any comments about that, but it was more comments from my parents directly.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I heard growing up was that I dressed like a boy, quote unquote. Um which I dress in a very like an androgynous style, which is basically just I don't really wear stereotypically feminine things like skirts or dresses, or even like I don't really wear bright colors or colors typically associated with girls, you know, like pink and that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I would describe it as an androgynous way to dress, but my family would describe it as you dress like a boy, which then it turned into you look like a boy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And my family isn't that like strict or like that bad with stuff like this, but it was always something that I heard like, "Oh, why do you dress like a boy? Why do you look like a boy?" And it's like, what does that even mean, you know?
No, yeah, I get that. And I mean, part of it also comes with like culture, right?
Yeah.
Because here it's really easy to say wear whatever you want. And I mean, sure, you could say that everyone should be able to wear what they want, but at the same time, there's cultural context that you have to take into it, whether or not that context is positive or negative.
Yeah,
You know?
definitely. Yeah. What about you, Tiffany?
For me, okay, well, growing up in a Chinese household, uh, I was born around the time that China still had the one-child policy, which we will be getting into later. So even though I didn't necessarily grow up in China, the energy and the perception towards girls that came from the one-child policy, as for people that don't know, from 1980 to about 2016, to control the population, China had a law that each household could only have one kid, and the only exception would, I guess, be twins, because you can't really do anything about that. That counts as one birth.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, a lot of people wanted boys because they would carry the family name, boys are better, and so on. And so my grandparents, they very much believed that. And while they didn't necessarily go up to me and say, it'd be great if you were a boy, they would mostly ignore me, not really care about me, not really speak to me unless they had to. And when I say that, I don't mean that they avoid me, but they would not initiate conversation unless they had something specific to ask that was pertaining to me. And the thing is, this is more of a personal thing, because a lot of other people would probably be very much affected by that. But for me, since I never really developed an emotional connection to them, it didn't really bother me that they didn't care about me. Which does not apply to everyone, because if someone is ignoring you and you don't want them to, then obviously you would be hurt, right? But I don't know. I think I never really established an emotional connection with them, and so there weren't feelings to hurt, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I don't know, because they never really attacked me in any way, it was more just they didn't really care about me. It definitely did affect the way I grew up, in the sense that, they didn't give me as much attention. So obviously my male cousins, by the way, I am an only child, so they would, maybe buy more things for my male relatives, cousins, talk to them more, obviously, and also pay attention to them a lot more.
Yeah.
The experience overall, or just that type of attitude, of course, isn't fine, but fortunately, it didn't have much of a direct negative impact on me. I can't really say it really had a subconscious effect on me either, because I don't know, I just never really thought about it. I just paid them no mind because they paid me no mind, Treat people the way you want to be treated. And in terms of relatives, my relatives, well, not all of them, obviously, but some of them, they were really vocal about gender roles, because they believed in traditional gender roles. Also, Asians, they have very traditional rules, right?
Yeah.
I would say Asians are more strict when it comes to following customs, as opposed to Western countries.
Yeah, definitely.
Western countries also don't really have as many rules, if that makes sense, because obviously they have gender roles, but it's the history not the same.
Yeah.
So, for example, one time when I was leaving China, this was during summer, my aunt and uncle, they were driving me to the airport. Well, not me, myself, my mother and I. And my aunt, I don't know how this came up, but she just told me in a very, like, hey, pro tip, or hey, like a suggestion, girls shouldn't be too powerful or too rich or too smart. Well, she shouldn't say girl. She said you.
Oh.
because then I'll have a hard time finding a husband, and then started making more generalized statements rather than just saying me, like saying, oh, because look at insert very famous female celebrity, she's been single for so long, or like insert someone maybe she knows or whatever. And of course you can you can see that rather than blaming the societal norm, she's blaming the female for not being desirable. Because what's really wrong with a girl being a CEO, or a girl being smart, or having traits that are typically praised in a male?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't disagree that girls that are more quote unquote powerful and rich, straight girls, or girls that like guys,
Yeah.
they tend to have a harder time finding a male partner because they're not viewed as desirable, or it's intimidating. Or one thing that I've heard a lot from Chinese people is that they feel like they can't control her. Emphasis on control, you know? It's like, I don't think I can handle you. Like, okay, then that's a you problem, not
exactly.
A me. You know?
Yeah.
And yeah, and the thing is, while it does root in Chinese customs, I will say that Chinese people, you can't necessarily say that they just straight up believe that girls can't be powerful, because China did once have an empress. In history, it was not just emperors. There was one empress, and she was a badass. I just gotta say.
Period.
So, I don't know. I typically, I don't want to say I try not to. I don't generally think about these things that much. I don't mean I don't think about gender roles. I'm just gonna put it out there. I don't really care what my relatives say to me.
Period.
It goes in one ear and it comes out the next. Because, like I've said in other episodes, you can't really ever make them proud or happy.
Exactly.
So don't. It's not. And also, it's not their life to live. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's also, it's not their husband. It's not their life. It's not their job. It's not their education.
Exactly.
Pay them no mind.
Also, like, it's not even your own kid. Like, even though I don't think parents should do that thing either, like, it's not even directly related to me. So,
yeah.
pop off.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I know that many relatives across other cultures do this as well. There's always that meme about Thanksgiving dinner.
Yep.
Awkward conversations at Thanksgiving dinner. There's always those relatives that you politically clash with, or you just clash with in general. So, I don't know. We can pretty much say this is like a universal thing. Like, sexism obviously doesn't just affect Asian. We just are talking about sexism within Asia, and also the Asian community, or the Asian diaspora.
One story I just remembered right now. So I was having
I'm scared.
I was having a conversation with my mom recently. I don't know why we were talking about it, but we were talking about like a lesbian. Oh, yeah, we were talking about a lesbian couple, and my mom made the comment, "Oh, so she's the man of the couple." Which, okay, don't get me started on that sentence. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's basically the whole thing about how even if two women are in a relationship, there always has to be a man in that relationship in order for it to work, you know? So I told my mom, first of all, that's not how that works. And second of all, if that is how it worked and your logic was correct, then you would be the man of that relationship. You are the man of the relationship. And I think it's really funny because she like immediately just stopped talking to me and got obviously she got mad at me for saying that. But it's true. Like by that logic, which is basically just people saying that the more dominating person is a
Yeah.
man,
Mhm.
which why is that a thing, you know?
Mhm.
Like it's a lesbian couple. There's no man of the relationship. That's the whole point.
Yeah. Gosh.
Yeah. I thought that was something funny that I could bring up.
It's funny in a haha way and also funny in a uh, way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Like
yeah, adding on to what you said about, what she really means is who's the more dominating one.
yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, we all know where it comes from, why people think that way, like sexism, gender role.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting how that's so interchangeable. Like when they say, "Oh, who's the man in the relationship, who's the girl in the relationship," as if there are only men and women.
Yeah.
They really just mean, oh, who's the more dominant one, who's the more submissive one, or who's the more whatever, whatever one. I feel weird saying submissive, sorry.
Yeah. And it yeah.
And it's just, I mean, it doesn't even necessarily have to be in like a romantic context. And also, I don't. Why do people feel the need to label, even not like who's the man, who's the woman in the relationship? Why do people feel the need to assign, oh, like this person's the dominating one, this person's the whatever?
Yeah, like that doesn't apply to all of the relationships.
Yeah. What if they're both? Because there are plenty of not even couples, platonic relationships, friendships where both people are very hot-headed or both people are very calm and quiet.
Yeah.
Earlier, I mentioned the one-child policy that China had, right? Well, recently, I was on her Instagram, and one of her connections, Bernice Ye, she posted a TikTok all about her experience growing up under the one-child policy.
I was born during China's one-child policy. And that one child better be boy. For those of you who don't know, boys carry the family name. So my grandpa was very disappointed that I can't get a girl pregnant. He was devastated when all of his sons had daughters. No one is carrying our family name yet. Well, guess what? There are 6 million yes. That's more than the country of Denmark. We're fine, Grandpa.
So, very funny TikTok, right?
Yes.
Well, I reached out to her about it since, like I said, we're mutual connection, and she was kind enough to send us an actual clip talking in depth about her story.
I was born during China's one-child policy. Every family have a different story to tell, and this is my story. Most people know that the society have a strong preference over boys. Truth is, my parents were happy to have a girl. They had college education. My mom is a very strong and independent woman. So I never feel I was treated less than a boy. If anything, my parents were always telling me girls can be just as smart and strong as boys, if not better. But the older generation held a very different view. They definitely prefer boys. And there are noticeable differences between my grandparents on my mom's side and my dad's side. So for my mom, she's already a daughter. She's already married to some other family. It didn't matter so much to her parents whether she's having a daughter or son. I'm not going to carry the other side of the family name anyway. And my mom had 2 brothers, so the burden was on them. My boy cousin was the only true grandson. So he was definitely in favor, right? My grandma would always save the special treat and cook special meal and save for him. But I wasn't treated badly at all. Like my grandma was pretty satisfied that she has a grandson already. It's a lot different on my dad's side. My dad is the oldest of 3 sons, and my grandpa held a lot of the old school traditional views. By the way, ultrasound wasn't allowed because, otherwise a lot family will have abortion if they find out they were having a girl. You find out what you have on the day off. When my mom was pregnant, she was so big, everybody thought she was having twins. And twins were the only legal way to have more than 1 child. So to many family, that's like winning the ultimate lottery. My grandparents were so excited and have such high expectation. But then the day came, the doctor opened my mom up. It's like, just the one fat baby. Then, plus they have 2 more sons, right? Like, of course, they're going to have a grandson. Then another girl, then the last one, a girl. So now my grandpa just turned on all of us. He was devastated. Shit, nobody's carrying our family name. Yeah. So my grandpa was so devastated that he became desperate. Apparently, he actually had a divorced wife with a son who he abandoned and left them in the countryside. Like my grandma doesn't even know they existed. None of us did. But he reached out to them and found out that his son had a son, right? So I didn't even know the full story because I was too little, but my grandpa was trying to bring the other family to live with us, and I remember my grandma was so upset. She was the most gentle soul, and I've never seen her lose her temper, but she left my grandpa's house and stayed with my parents for a while, and she was crying every day. Eventually, the other family didn't stay with us, but every major holiday they would also come and ask my grandpa for a lot of money each time. Like, oh, this is your only grandson. I don't have enough money. Can you support us? It caused a lot of tension and drama to our family. After elementary school, my parents moved to a different city, so I lived with my grandparents on my dad's side. Grandma loves me. She's always so loving and gentle, but Grandpa just saw, all his granddaughters as disappointment. I recall when I first had my period, my grandpa made a comment. It's like, women's life are cheap. Otherwise, how come you bleed for nothing every month? Like your blood is worthless. I still remember that to this day. I remember talking back to my grandpa. It's like, you're wrong. I'm going to prove you that I'm better than a boy. I studied really hard. In school, I won math, writing, public speaking, even crafting competitions. And for both middle school and high school entrance exam, I was the number 1 of the entire city. I was in the newspaper. So at some point, my grandpa turned around. He was looking at me, and he started to care for me. Like, he would go to the supermarket to buy my favorite food. And I remember it was a new thing when there's this McDonald's-like fried chicken come out. My grandpa was the first one who got that for me. And then because I liked it, he will go there every week to get that for me. And later, he even wrote poems to praise me and his other granddaughters. He even got it published on national magazines. Later, I got into Beida, Peking University. It's like the Harvard of China. My grandpa was so proud of me, and he just couldn't stop bragging about me in front of other people. Well, I wish I didn't need to do this to get grandpa's love. I did feel all the prejudice against the girls made us stronger. I went to Peking University for computer science, and in my class of 40 students, 12 are women, and the girls were kicking ass. The top 10 students, 6 of them are girls. So I do feel my generation of Chinese women are very special. We're strong, smart, and badass.
She is very accomplished.
That's an understatement.
Yeah,
When
for
I
real,
first
though.
listened to this after she sent this to me, I was like, whoa.
I know, right?
And honestly, in this day and age where people are always flexing, seeing that she just says it like it is, because she was like, oh yeah, and I got into this place. It's not like, oh yeah, I got into this place. Or,
Yeah.
it wasn't flex. It wasn't a flex. It was just I went here.
Yeah, for real. Also, the fat baby part.
I know, and the thing is, it's just like her TikTok, and then it's extended version. It's still just as funny. Great speaker.
Yeah, for real. Y'all should check her out.
Yes. A little background on her. She is a Chinese comedian, writer, and dancer. Triple threat. She's also just like a nunchuck legend. I just have to put that out there. Based in America, and lately she's been doing a lot of virtual shows, workshops, and similar things. So if you're interested, we'll have all her links and all her info in the description. So check a girl out.
Tiffany, can you elaborate a bit more about China's one-child policy?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, due to the one-child policy, since a lot of Asian families, and this is just a thing that comes with traditional Chinese culture, most people would prefer sons since they would carry the family name, like Bernice said. And so a lot of girls, they would end up either being put up for adoption, maybe secretly too, just so the government wouldn't know they already had a kid, killed, and a lot of the time, female babies were the ones that would end up being aborted. And as a result, I remember I saw this statistic. They said that there's a huge imbalance in China's population, like Bernice said in her TikTok, and there's like 35 million more men than women, so there's a huge imbalance in ratio, and of course, not every person in China is straight. However, in the media, there are a lot of memes saying that because there's so many more guys than girls, the guys, they have to like step up their game or figure out what they're gonna do to find a wife because there's so many single guys. And honestly, all jokes aside, this was a really dark part of China's history because it's a very much like a sexist driven thing, right? Because it was solely based on the fact that these babies, they were female, and so they were given up, quote unquote, thrown away because they weren't worth keeping.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to what I said about traditional Chinese culture, there's a thing in Chinese culture, specifically in the language, the written language. The word good, and I'll put this up on the screen, is split, is in Cantonese is Hao and in Mandarin is Hao. And if you look at the way it's written, it's two separate characters. The one on the left is a girl, and the one on the right is a guy. And so when people have one son and one daughter, they'll say like, "Oh, that's good," or "You made the good word," And the strange thing about this is that despite this being a belief that lasted forever, during this time with the one-child policy, which to reiterate, it lasted between 1980 to 2016. So if you're talking about the course of China's history, that's not that long. China's been around for centuries.
Yeah.
And despite this being like a long-held belief, during this one-child policy, people just completely threw that away. Not that cultural belief necessarily, like dictate an entire person's life. However, having this huge belief people just completely ignored it and were like, sun, yes. And yeah, that was just a little observation I wanted to make, because I thought it was weird how, despite it being good to have sons and daughters were irrelevant during that time. It was an awful time.
Mm-hmm. Going back to what you said about the Empress, why are Asian women portrayed to be submissive, even though Chinese women in China are known to be badass, and Filipino women are considered like demons, you know?
Yeah, it's very much I would say it's very much a Western lens to call Asian women submissive, because even though there very much are gender roles present in Asia, I would say I don't know. It's just because even now and in the past, I've seen memes or jokes in the media about angry Asian women or whatever, which can also be a toxic thing, since when women speak up for themselves,
Yeah.
they're considered like the B word, bossy, and so on.
Yeah.
But I don't, because even going back to what I said about memes, like memes about there are videos I've seen about northern Chinese women versus southern Chinese women, and it's not about like, oh, who's more dominant, who's more submissive. They just show like different ways that women are dominant or assert themselves, or like, oh, I'm pretty sure I might have mentioned this in the Crazy Cheap Asian episode, not Crazy Rich. We're not there yet.
Nope.
Notice I said yet. In those videos, they'll show northern Chinese women and being like, oh, very boss CEOs, powerful women, very well dressed. And then the southern Chinese women, a big stereotype is that a lot of them like to buy buildings or buy apartments, not the entire apartment, like a condo or something, and then rent them out, and that's how they make money. And those are usually the memes or videos I see about that. One video I did see about northern versus Chinese women in a submissive versus dominant, angry versus calm context was, I don't know if I could call it Asian American or strictly Chinese, but it definitely felt like a Western lens was being applied, even though I'm pretty sure the people that made that video were in China. They're saying, oh, if a Southern Chinese person got cheated on, it would be similar to in the dramas where they stand from afar and cry, but then the Northern Chinese woman would run up to them and like beat their partner up or something, which, gender roles aside, that's just inaccurate, because let's not even say Southern Chinese. Isn't there a stereotype that Southern people anywhere are very forward?
Yeah. That's true.
The only stereotype I've ever heard where Northern people are more aggressive or whatever would be when people say, oh, like North Korea versus South Korea.
I was not expecting that.
Well, yeah, it's just, I don't know. Sometimes these things just don't make sense to me, because it's not accurate just from in an experience context. It's just not true. Not the North Korea, South Korea thing, the Northern Chinese versus Southern Chinese thing.
Yeah. Also, just to explain a little to people who don't know why Filipino women may be called demons, it's like
That's an extreme adjective.
it's like a very From what I see, again, interesting on how people view Filipino women versus how Filipino women view themselves, or Filipino men. Um, Whenever I see a Filipino girl making a video about Filipino girls, it's always like, you don't know how crazy we can get. And it's the same thing with like Filipino boys, They're always saying like Filipino women are actually crazy. Y'all don't know. And it's funny because the same thing is said by white men who marry Filipino women. They always make the same statement of, you want to get an Asian girl because you think that she's nice and sweet and she'll cook for you and all that, until you date a Filipino girl. And it's funny that those white guys are saying that because why are you dating an Asian woman then? And why are you saying that? But yeah, it's always people like who don't really know that stereotype who are always like, oh, Filipinos are so nice, they're so welcoming, all that. And then when you're talking to someone who's either in the community or are connected to the community, they're like, nope, that's not it. They're crazy,
Yeah. One thing I find really interesting is, I don't know, do you think maybe they got that stereotype? Well, not the aggressive Filipino stereotype. The assumption that they would be calm and sweet through nursing, since nursing is a very nurturing and caring job.
Yeah, I think it's also just like history-wise, like back when like the Americans had bases in the Philippines, a lot of women would like go there to like appeal to these white guys,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's always carried through. It wasn't that long ago either. But that stereotype of, oh, I was like part of the army, I went to the Philippines and all the women there were really, really nice. Like that stereotype has always, like, it's still prominent to this day from what I feel like. And I feel like the nursing stereotype is also, it's more recent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more catered towards like Filipinos in the West.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's typical for Filipinos in the West to become a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting. Like it's always the white guy who was in the army that has something to say about Filipino women.
Yeah.
But yeah, always a white guy who has something to say. My point.
Mm-hmm. It also comes from anime and things like that, because if we're gonna talk about specifically the types of animes that make white guys, we just happen to be saying white guys. Obviously, not all white guys, not all guys.
Yes.
Don't even say that to me, please. I will not take it. A lot of the times, I'm trying to trying to go around the word that I don't want to say. It's a certain type of anime that they might be watching that would give them that idea that Asian people are very submissive.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since there's that image of the cute Asian girl, or just the very quiet but shy, like, oh, it's not like I really like you.
Yeah.
They really like that. And while that may be true for some people, it's not true for everyone. Just like how it's not all men and not all white guys. Look at that connection.
Nice.
And yeah, it's definitely, I would say the media plays a large part in it, because like we were saying before, even though women aren't necessarily portrayed as weak. If you look at not if you look at it through a Western lens, a lot of the stuff that caters to the Western lens or Westerners like tend to be of that category.
Mm-hmm.
Although, if we talk about dramas, television dramas, a lot of romance or more school-related dramas do tend to make the girl a short, less attractive, very shy person. This is I don't know if I want to say it's very recent, but a popular style of making school dramas now, especially if we're talking about like K-dramas and Chinese dramas. The main female character, they will have short hair, maybe bangs, just like a your traditional little Asian girl kind of hair, the bob Dora hair. And then the guy will be this like tall, cold, mysterious person. And so that does perpetuate a lot of gender stereotypes. And it's weird because, I don't know, one thing that's always bothered me just universally is how female characters always have to glow up in a sense, not, oh, I'm confident now, that why is it that they have to be more feminine to be confident? I stumbled upon a study by APA, American Psychological Association, about the perception of Asian American women and their experiences of discrimination. And they identified 6 themes. Hang on. So they surveyed Asian American women and asked them about their personal experiences with discrimination. And they identified 15 types and then 6 that were specific to how race and gender interact in discrimination towards Asian American women in particular. And the 6 points here, we have 1, exotic, exotic geisha girl. And then 2, not a leader. 3, submissive, which these 2 pretty much go hand in hand. Oh, and then actually the rest of these basically are the same thing. You have cute and small, invisible, and service worker.
Ew.
I know. It's in what way? It's very much. Why are people of color seen as like lesser and also meant to service you?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, it's gross. Even just like listening to those, reading those like categories makes me feel ugh.
Yeah, it makes me feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I have to look around.
Yeah, take a breather.
Yeah, like don't look at me. Which I guess plays into the invisible thing, but we're not gonna talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't believe us, there's studies.
Yeah.
It's in black and white, set in stone.
But obviously people won't listen because it's biased work.
Yeah, like shouldn't you be happy that people? Yeah. No. Why? Shouldn't you be happy that white guys find it attractive because you're like submissive or whatever? It's like,
yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Plays into the yellow fever thing too. Well, at the end of the day, it's, I don't know. We say this in a lot of episodes. It's easy to like point fingers at things, but at the end of the day, it also comes down to like self-awareness and also just recognizing things when they happen. And I don't know, just it's important to have conversations about these things that are ideally not aggressively confrontational.
Mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't help to approach many things aggressively, because then, like I said, pointing fingers, assigning faults, like, well, you should be happy. It's like, not all, whatever.
Yeah.
There's no easy or step-by-step way to take on, like, any of the things that we mentioned today.
Yeah, definitely.
But us talking about it starts the conversation.
Yeah. Even just like listening to this and educating yourself is like a lot. It's doing a lot.
In a sense, a lot of the time, even though some sexism is very obvious and you can take it at face value, sometimes you suppress that in your mind.
Yeah.
You're just so used to it.
Yeah. And like listening to people talk about it and realizing like, hey, this is wrong. It'll hopefully, if you're listening, you will also start to realize, hey, maybe that thing that I heard from my parents has been affecting me, and maybe I can do something to change that,
Mm-hmm.
Like I genuinely, earlier when I was talking about my parents like not wanting boys, and then I realized, or wanting boys, sorry, and then me realizing that maybe that's why I always hated the color pink when I was younger. I genuinely like thought of that while I was saying it.
And I mean, it makes sense. A lot of the time, when you're used to something, you don't notice it anymore. Or maybe in my case, you don't care anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's... You know what? One, I'm making this step by step. No, I'm not. It's important to have conversations about these things. It's important to recognize this within ourselves and within our peers, whether or not you identify as female. And it's important to stick up for each other.
Mm-hmm.
Please.
Even just acknowledging something or pointing it out.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
Just like, hey, maybe that's not right.
Yeah, I mean, that does a lot. It really does. Because even if that person had malicious intent, or if that person didn't have malicious intent, they might say, oh, wait, did I say something off just now?
Yeah, like...
That doesn't apply to everyone, but
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for tuning in today. We covered a lot.
Yeah.
Before I go into my leave a comment about spiel, I'd like to thank Bernice Ye for sending in her lovely clip alongside her TikTok. If you'd like to check her out, if you're interested in comedian, we'll have some of her stuff linked below.
Mm-hmm.
Now, comment time. Now you can get on your keyboard and leave comments.
Yes.
Leave a comment. Feel free to leave a comment about resources that you may know. As we said, Asian hate crimes are at an all-time high, and we all need to do something about it, whether or not it's in a monetary way. And feel free to leave a comment about your experience growing up as a female, maybe not as a female, things you've noticed, things your friends have gone through, your family has gone through. If you experience what it's like to grow up under China's one-child policy, you know someone that did, feel free to leave a comment about that. Maybe your thoughts on the way that Asian women, or women in general, are portrayed in the media. We'd love to hear it. Like we said, we're here to start conversation, and we'd love it if you started a conversation in the comments.
Yeah. Okay, well, if you want to find out more about us, check out the card link in our Instagram bio. It contains links to all of our streaming platforms such as Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, and more. follow us for more behind the scenes content, announcements, and other random things we decide to put on there.
See you next time.
Bye!